Welcome to Across the Gulf Coast, highlighting organizations, events, and people from around our local community.
Hello, I'm Cam Johnson, Public Affairs Manager for Cox Communications, and I'd like to welcome you to this special episode of Across the Gulf Coast. Well, believe it or not, summer is here, and that also means the start of the hurricane season in the Atlantic. And joining me to talk about that and some preparedness tips and getting you ready for this season is John Dosh. He is the Emergency Management Manager for Escambia County. John, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me out.
Absolutely. So we see you, I guess, once a year now,
right?
As we prepare for this time of year. But it's definitely a serious time of year where residents do need to be prepared. Let's start off kind of just talking about the season overall. What is the forecast? What are people saying the 2017 hurricane season is going to look like?
Well, right now the experts are telling us that we're going to see probably less than an average year. They're seeing signs of a potential El Nino developing, which tends to put us in a climate that is not conducive for strong development of storms. And so that's going to be a good thing. As far as the numbers game that is played by a lot of agencies, we don't usually play that a whole bunch because all it takes is one storm to hit you and it's a real bad year. So, they're saying below average because of El Nino, and we're going to hope that's the case. And we continue on the trend that we're on right now with little to no impacts or activities.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had one, but
it has.
You just made an excellent point. All it takes is just that one.
Correct.
To totally change your season. So with that in mind, and with hurricane season running June 1st to November 30th, what do residents need to be doing? What can I do now to get my family ready, my home ready, and just be ready for a storm that might come this way?
The first thing is have a plan. Line out what you want to do, how you want to do it, when you want to do it. So you can work through that process in a sequence. Making sure you're involving the entire family. If you've got elderly folks in the family, include them. If you've got younger children or something like that in the family, include them as well. Everybody has a part to play here in developing the plan and having a disaster supply kit. So now's the time to start doing those things. Restocking your disaster supply kit. If you're a person that's been living here along the Gulf Coast for years and years and years, hopefully you've got a disaster supply kit. Time to go in and replace that bottled water. Maybe go in and restock some of those crackers and the non-perishable food items that might be in your disaster kit. Make sure that you've got all the appropriate paperwork, up-to-date paperwork. Don't rely on something that occurred 2 years ago. Get some up-to-date paperwork on your insurance policies and birth certificates and all those things. Copies, all those need to go in your disaster supply kit.
Do you have a list? Is there somewhere people can go to see what my plan needs to have in it, what my disaster supply kit needs to have?
We on our website, we've got bereadyescambia.com. They can go to our website. We have a disaster guide on there that helps them plan for any disasters, whether it be hurricanes or floods or whatever. It'll help them through that. And there's also some information there on how to build a plan.
Now, a lot of times as the storm's approaching, you guys might call for evacuations, whether they be voluntary, mandatory. How can I find out, A, if I'm in an evacuation zone, and then if I do need to evacuate if a storm is coming?
Okay. On our website, on the bereadyescambia.com, there's a place in there where you can actually type in your address, and it'll take you to a map that shows you whether you do or do not live in one of the evacuation zones.
Okay.
And the evacuation zones are areas that the scientists have shown us through studies and through computer models that what parts of our community will be impacted by storm surge predominantly.
So it's not wind,
it's not
water.
Wind, it's water. We have a saying in the business, we run from the water and hide from the wind.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we want to make sure that people out of harm's way, because that water is the biggest, it creates the majority of the damage, and it's the biggest killer from any storm that's ever impacted the United States. We go back and look at history, and water is the big killer. So we want to make sure we're getting people out of harm's way, and that's what those evacuation zones are for.
So how does that decision get made then? Is there a certain time frame? All right, just 36 hours out, we think it's going to impact this zone the hardest, so those people need to get out? How's that done?
There's a lot of variables on how soon we make that decision. We're working very closely with the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center trying to figure out how big the storm is, how big the wind fields of the storm are, what surge we're going to see from that storm. And a lot of it changes based upon its forward movement, it's how it's going to approach the coast. There's a lot of variables there. So we're working very closely with the the scientists and meteorologists to figure out, is it going to impact us first of all, and if so, when is it going to impact us? And we know for some of the higher category storms, what we consider major storms, our extreme evacuation zones, some of the higher level ones, could take us up to 24, even 30 hours to evacuate. So we've got to lean that much further forward. So I'm sorry I can't give you a direct answer because there's so many variables there.
But you have to err on the side of caution, right?
We will always err on the side of caution. Typically, we will lean a little bit further forward because we'd much rather have done a little bit too much than not have done enough.
And that's a good point that you just made too about how long it would take to do the evacuation. If and we saw this with Opal, for people that were here with Opal, I know I woke up the morning of and my parents said, hey, we got to go, and we were stuck on the interstate for 10 hours. So it does take a lot of time to get people out. So how does that play into, like if my family evacuating, when should I think, okay, it's time for us to go? You know, it might still be a little ways out, we still might not know, but maybe we should pack it up.
Well, first of all, know where you live. Are you in an evacuation zone or not? Do you live in an area that has that could potentially see flooding from torrential rainfall? Is your home maybe not as sturdy as you would like it to be? Those are some of the decisions you need to make up front on, am I going to go or am I going to stay? The earlier you can make that decision, the better you are for you and your family. We are going to make an official decision for the community as a whole as soon as we can, based upon the information we're getting from the meteorologists and the National Weather Service, National Hurricane Center. I typically try to tell people, time a storm gets in the Gulf of Mexico, you need to be prepared to move.
Sure.
Okay? Because if you want to beat that traffic, you're going to have to leave earlier than when we issue the evacuation orders. So that's going to be a personal decision that one's going to have to make. Here's an idea. Evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. Doesn't mean you have to leave the community.
Right.
Just get out of those storm surge areas. Find another place with a family member or a friend that lives out of those areas, has a pretty decent, a newer home maybe, because they all have to meet the new building standards.
True.
And hunker down with them. You know, we all are more comfortable with others. We're, you know, we tend to feel better when we have folks around us and we're not all by ourselves.
Make it a little, you know, hurricane party, a little spend the night
Yeah,
party
I wouldn't
or
get
something.
crazy with
a little slumber
anything.
party.
Yeah, but certainly a slumber party is probably a good way to put it. You bring your disaster supply kit, combine it with theirs, hang out together, ride the storm out, and then hopefully with no damages, those folks will be able to go back home.
And as you mentioned, definitely the supply kit with all
Absolutely.
your medications, stuff for babies. Of course, bring the pets.
Pets, pet foods, any medications for babies or pets, you know, just think through, ask yourself the questions with the what ifs. What if this, the what if that's, and start answering those questions, and that will help you fill that disaster checklist as well as your supply kit.
Sure. And if you can't get out of town or if you have nowhere to go, shelters. How many shelters do you have here locally, and then what's the kind of the policy?
We have 10 shelters. The majority of those are in public school buildings that have been evaluated and meet a certain criteria. They're all predominantly all manned by the American Red Cross, volunteers from the Red Cross, and you know, we're going to provide you with a piece of concrete on the floor of a hallway in a school. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Please don't go there thinking that you know, this is going to be something luxurious, because it's not. A lot of people, the Red Cross does as good a job as they can to provide feeding for everybody. It may be a bologna sandwich. I just want to make sure people don't have false expectations. They're going to one of these things and they're going to have a nice little cot with a mint on their pillow. That's not going to be the case. So I highly encourage people to make better plans for themselves and their families. But if you have absolutely nowhere else to go, the shelters are available. They are going to be listed on our website, and you can choose the one that's closest to you. Now, we do have a phased opening now because of some of the volunteer organizations are they're struggling to try to get manpower to open these. We're having to fill shelters closer to the coast and then work our way out as they fill, because they just don't have the capabilities of opening all of them at one time.
Okay. One thing we've seen too, right after a storm, and you guys have always had that great slogan, the first 72 are on you.
Right.
Right after the storm, you guys are busy or might not be able to get to people, right? So what is my responsibility as a resident? Say I wanted to stay at the house and ride out the storm. What is my responsibility? What should I expect following the storm?
Your responsibility to you, your family, or even your business, if we can talk about the business perspective, is you need to be prepared, period, for you. If you, for some reason, fall short, we're going to try to have the resources there within 72 hours to be able to support some minimal life, water, food, those types of things. It's better for you and your family if you plan appropriately and have all that in place. Whatever you like, your foods, your, the liquids and all that kind of stuff. It's the individual's responsibility to take care of themselves. That's the down and dirty of it all. We will try to do what we can afterwards to help for those that weren't capable. But we say the first 72, I would like to say the first week or 2 weeks. Be prepared to take care of yourselves for that period of time.
Hence your disaster supply kit, your water,
Absolutely.
your food, your medications, everything. As you said, you guys will try to bring in the water or ice or whatever.
Our focus is to try to get infrastructure back online, get the power up, get the businesses open, so you can go to where you normally go day to day to get your items that you need to survive from day to day. That's our focus, is to try to get those things accomplished as quickly as possible.
And of course, to help you guys do that, ask residents to stay off the roads following us.
Right. We're not just trying to be, controlling or mean or anything, but there's a lot of things happening. A lot of utility companies out there trying to get the power back on, trying to get the cable back on. It's a big communications thing. It's, all the communications companies trying to make sure the infrastructure is in place so people can get moving. And the faster and more access that we have to do that, the faster we can get it done.
Sure. We got about 2 minutes left, and of course we could talk about hurricanes and hurricane season all day, but I do want to also talk about the fact that it's been a while since we've had a storm, or at least a direct hit here locally. But since then we've had...
Excuse me.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Since then we've had ice storms and floods and oil spills and tornadoes and everything else. So it's not just hurricanes you need to be prepared for, right?
Correct. We really promote disaster preparedness, not just hurricane preparedness. Hurricane is what gets all the publicity because it impacts our entire community, but disaster preparedness is important. And a lot of the same things that you would use for a hurricane, you could use for all the other stuff, okay? Just making sure you've got the things to take care of yourself if nobody else is there to do it for you. So going through the disaster supply kits, making sure you got your kits ready and you've got your family plan together and everybody knows what to do. It's all basically the same for any disaster for the most part.
And you said all of this information is available on your website?
It is. It's available on our website at bereadyescambia.com.
And I noticed too, you got these the booklets here. Can people pick these up here locally?
They can. They can pick them up at our office at the Public Safety Building at 6575 North W Street, or this is available as a PDF online. They can download it.
Okay. Great. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show. Hopefully we don't see a whole lot of you this year. Hopefully this is your only time on TV and we don't have to see you for a hurricane or any kind of storm event here locally. But thank you so much for coming on and letting everybody know how to prepare for this year.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll be in Okaloosa County to talk about preparations along the Emerald Coast.